welcome back to Sextras,
where we talk about sex and all the extras.
I'm Honey.
And I'm Maria.
And we're actually together
I'm
right
looking
now.
at Honey right now.
We're
I can touch her.
Sitting next to each other.
Face.
So wild. It honestly makes such a difference to recording low-key, because like I feel like when it's just over the phone, I'm so low energy. Like I'm just staring at the laptop and I feel like I'm just talking to no one.
Yeah, honestly, you kind of do zone out, and then with the like 3 people in the call, it's like a bit much. So I'm quite glad that we got to record together today, because I mean we have a special guest for you guys today, this episode.
Yeah, we're joined by Mariah Freya, who is one of the founders of Beducated, which is a like sex education platform, and she's just a really cool woman overall. She's got a TEDx talk. She knows loads about sexual pleasure, and we talked to her about how to like keep your sex life alive as you get older and like the different sexual phases of your life. And she shared a lot about her own experience, and yeah, it was just super interesting. So we're really excited to be joined by her, and let's get into it.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for joining us. We're so excited to be talking to you. And we're going to talk a little bit about the changing phases of sexuality as you age, and kind of destigmatizing having sex throughout different phases of your life. So, and you have an amazing TEDx talk about that, and we're really excited to kind of dive into it. So yeah, could we talk a little bit just about like how you got into this line of work, like what made you interested in it, where your expertise comes from?
Yeah, sure. Yeah, I think my own starting point with my sex life was definitely in my 20s, when I started, being in a relationship for a couple of years in with Phil, my today husband, and also father of my 2 kids, and also co-founder of my company. And we're now this year together for 16 years, so quite a while. Yeah, he was definitely my main partner in my 20s, which is kind of statistically the most explorative and most sexually active time in our life. So yeah, when I was sort of discovering my sexuality, I was at this point feeling quite low in libido, and I realized only later that some of the sexual assault experiences actually led to that point, that I simply didn't feel very open and very connected with my body. So there was like a certain numbness that I believe was caused through sexual assault that I experienced in my childhood, but also later during my teenage years. And then Phil was kind of like very patient with me, but of course, being in a relationship for a couple of years, a partner who's on low libido, like that eventually bubbles up and eventually becomes an issue. So so he was like, hey, like there must be a way to, make this work, to find things that excite us and find things that maybe help you, to feel more excited about sex. And I was back then a social worker, so I studied social work, and I wanted, like in a naive way, change the world by helping people. And I always was sort of interested in like women's empowerment and kind of what does it mean to really feel empowered as a woman, to really feel having all access available like any other gender. And so I was already kind of interested in that field, but I never thought at that point that sexuality would be that tool that I would be putting out there, eventually founding a company with the largest sex education library on the planet, with over 100 different courses on anything from tantra massage to kink, and everything in between. So I realized that, coming back to my story, we were in India, realizing that I worked for an NGO there, and I had someone who recommended me a course on vulva massage. And that was sort of the turning point for me. Like, I was not really scared, interestingly enough, even though I was at that point definitely not very confident about my sexuality, but I was just curious, like, oh wow, what is this? Like, tell me more. Like, I've never heard about this before. And yeah, what? You can have squirting orgasms? What is that? What is even a G-spot? You know, like I suddenly had all these answers that I didn't know were inside of me and just bubbled up. And yeah, not even knowing about my G-spot back then. I think it was also not very popular in, like, I don't know, 20, 15 years ago, that people would talk a lot about it. It was very niche, and now it's, I think, becoming more popular. Yeah, so somehow I said, hey, Phil, let's do it. Let's try this out and learn this. And yeah, that was really for me a very empowering tool and moment to experience my G-spot, experience squirting and all like different types of pleasures that I haven't, yeah, untapped before and experienced before. So it was sort of like a proof from my body that there is something empowering that's already sitting right there that I didn't feel before. And I think that was definitely for me the starting point to see, okay, sexuality is actually a really amazing empowerment tool, especially for me as a vulva owner. And yeah, I definitely want to make this more accessible to the world. And yeah, that's how the company came up, and that's how I ended up in this space and still am. Sorry for
Amazing.
that very long monologue.
No, it's such an interesting backstory, and yeah, kind of a good insight into like why you're interested in it personally. What was your like sex education like kind of growing up, if you don't mind me asking?
Yeah, so I grew up in Germany, and my family definitely wasn't necessarily conservative because, for example, my grandpa, he would go swimming at the lake naked. So like there was this sort of habit of going swimming at nudist beaches, and we would just, hang out at different nudist places, even as a kid already. So that was something that felt quite open, like just that knowing that it's okay to be naked without necessarily having a sexual connection with that. And I'd say I definitely had this like curiosity as a kid. I remember just exploring a lot with my friends, even already at a very young age, without even knowing that this was like a sexual act or somewhat sexually related, just that curiosity of exploring the body, like different holes that you can put stuff in it and, things like that. But I definitely didn't have like the education, what it would mean, or also not necessarily a negative education on, hey, like this is a taboo, you're not allowed to do this, because somehow we never also got really caught with that. So, and then later in my teenage years, I remember I had only one 60 minutes lesson in biology class where we got sort of the basics of the anatomy of a male body and a female body, but there wasn't anything around any pleasure points like the clitoris or the G-spot, or how to experience pleasure with sex. It was really more like a dry anatomical class, and how to protect yourself from pregnancy. Luckily, I also wasn't educated in a negative way, so that they say like it's harmful, it's bad for you, you have to be careful. So it was just very neutral, German, dry. Which I'd say is also not the most ideal way, because yeah, you simply don't even have, you have no idea how to experience pleasure with it. You have to sort of almost make negative experiences first in order to know, okay, what could be a good experience. Yeah, and that's definitely sad. And I think in most countries, I'm not sure about the UK or what type of education you receive, but I think all countries have a taboo. There's no country in this world that doesn't have a taboo around sex. So it's definitely a struggle for every single person. Unless you're very lucky and you, kind of grow up with some sex therapist as your mom, or, yeah.
Yeah. No, it's very true, and I think coming from your experience, as you were saying, like getting a quite a square version of like these are the facts, and then coupled with sort of what you were saying earlier, what you experienced, like sexual assault and things like that, it kind of only gives a view of sex that it's either like a shameful and bad thing, or like just a natural, like, biological thing, and then it is only like till later on in life, which I think the way that you were describing it, it made me think of like a Pandora's box, like sort of opening and being like, oh, this is all like the other stuff that nobody told me about, that is like what actually makes sex great, and as you said, can be very empowering, especially coming from those experiences where you can take ownership and be like, because at the end of the day, yeah, like, knowledge is power. Like, by having that information and that knowledge, you can really like take control.
Yeah, there's probably a reason why politics are keeping this type of education low in profile, prohibited to advertise, because it is like somehow like controlling people, as it's such a powerful insight of knowing what you like and what you don't like. It ultimately empowers people also to tell their boss what they don't like and like. So, it has a ripple effect in all parts of our lives. And yeah, I mean, it sounds almost a little bit like conspiracy theory, but like I feel like being in that industry, working in this industry, you constantly struggle with barriers and like limitations and restrictions around advertising, around reaching more people, around growing the company, just because big tech is controlling the way what they put out there. And so they not only restricting porn stars or like more nude pictures on social media, but yeah, also sexual education platforms not to be present. We've lost our Instagram account twice. We've struggled really a lot with that. So it's a political work. Yeah, so somehow you have to believe in this like utopia of, on the other side of, there must be like a more sex positive way. And I feel like with the Gen Z, I believe you're both Gen Z generation, that like there is stuff happening. My brother, he's like in his mid-20s, he's a DJ in Germany, and he's part of this collective. And when I went to his DJ gig, there was a person at the entrance saying, hey, I'm not sure if you're aware, but if you ever experience sexual assault, or someone is too pushy, or you don't feel comfortable in this space, like, come to us. We're just right at the entrance. We're your awareness team. Also make sure that you're not being drugged, make sure you keep your drinks safe, and kind of like that education around how to be safe in the night, in clubs and in when making party. And I feel like that, like, I didn't have that type of education, which I feel it's such a great evolution in your generation, just because it seems like more common sense. So I'm not sure, you would probably know better why that is, but
yeah, I think there's definitely more of a conversation around consent and sexual assault, and I think it's only getting better and like more open, but I definitely think there's a long way to go still. Like, just because those signs are there doesn't mean that people actually feel safe to report certain things that happen to them, or even tell like their closest friends or family. And yeah, I guess that comes back to sex education again, and being able to recognize it, and also all the things that go under the radar in terms of the sex that we have consensually. Like, stuff might happen in the middle of sex that you haven't necessarily agreed to, which we've talked quite a bit about. And I think that whole conversation around that needs to change as well. So yeah, it would be great to kind of hear how you think. Well, firstly, if we could kind of revisit this idea of the phases of sex throughout your life, because in your TED talk you were saying that younger people, they have this excitement around sex, and it's like it's all very new. And yeah, how does it suddenly go from that to like being in, say, either being a mother in your 30s or in your 40s, 50s upwards, and there being like this stigma around you having sex or not necessarily knowing how to keep that sex life alive?
yeah, I think there is this misbelief that sex education is only relevant in our teenage years. But I think it's actually a really bad belief, because like, especially in our teenage years, it's like the worst time to receive such education, because we're anyways all over the place with hormones. So ideally we already receive education before that, where it's already sort of natural, and then it doesn't feel like such a hoo topic, and which is not really receiving because I'm anyway so hoo. And then in your 20s, there is no education anymore, and you're just like exploring without any rules. You're most sexually active, but in the same time, like nobody's really telling you what to do or where. Finding the education is really hard. And then it keeps on going, like it's just blank at any stage of your sexual life cycle. And so I definitely believe in our childhood. It starts with parents ultimately to naturally live sexual positive and healthy life. I mean, it doesn't mean that you really show them sex, but just naturally having that intimacy and living that a little bit more in front of the kids. And when my boy came in the other day, he entered the toilet, and I had my menstruation and just kind of changed my bleeding pad. Like he saw the blood, and I was like, hey, like have a look, like do you know what that means? And this is mommy bleeding, and I'm having that once a month, and it's something normal that all young women go through, or vulva owners. So he was like, okay, thanks, I'm gonna go play Lego now. So like it was something, like just like not trying to make a big taboo out of like such a natural thing, and educating him already now. He's 4 years old, but like he will have, like if I'm just having a natural conversation about his questions that will pop up, will be just such a normal thing that he'll be able also to take in as a teenager later on the education, and then realizing, okay, like it's really cool to actually know what you do, and then he keeps on educating ideally himself. So for myself, I definitely didn't have that, and I think it's still for most people a challenge to question our sex life and get a little bit out of our comfort zone, like because it is such a taboo, like it every time takes an extra effort, right? Like I am now a mom of 2 young kids, so my personal challenge is probably very different from your personal challenge in your 20s, because there you kind of need to make sure that you're safe with all the different sexual experiences that you have, that you don't have too many negative experiences that causes harm for maybe later sexual experiences in the future. So you kind of have just to manage a way around that, and still allowing yourself, all the desires, and be able to navigate through that. So in my 30s, or as a mom, I'm more challenged with not having enough time, to self-pleasure, or not having enough time to be with my partner. And like the challenge of simply prioritizing your sex life, and when you're scheduling it in your calendar, how still to make it fun, exciting, and somehow, new, because I do think that the diversity is something, and that's, I think, very unique also with Beducated. We're offering a lot of diversity in terms of courses and fantasies and journeys people can put their toes in and get the education, and then eventually make that a wish or desire come true. So how can I sort of pick that up, that diversity, even if I'm like in the most stressful time of my life, which I think gets better in your 40s. And I think they also say, like with age, sex, like with wine, sex gets better with age. Like it's just that you're overcoming your own like critical thinker about your body. Like you're not as maybe perfectionistic about your body anymore, which often challenges us to relax in our 20s and 30s. So in your 40s, you're maybe more, just kind of like are fine with the wrinkles and not as worried anymore, and have a little bit of that, like you've seen already a lot, and like a bit of a standing, I guess, in your sexuality. But of course, like it's still challenging for most people to ask for desires or realize certain fantasies that they secretly think about. So there I'll definitely need more guidance, on how to really ask for stuff, and how to maybe get a certain space for myself where I can just live that more. And so right now I'm definitely in that phase of kids being all over the place. Where is that lover inside of me, and trying to pick up the pieces? For sure.
So it's like, do you think the main barriers to people like not having that flexibility or that kind of like diversity, as you were saying, in their sex life is like time, space, and also like, yeah, just having that questioning? Are there any other barriers that you think people kind of face?
Yeah, it's really so unique, everyone's sexual journey. So everyone has a little bit of a different challenge, a little bit of a different situation where they're starting out. But there's for sure like probably 100 different scenarios where we could find, a specific course or a specific tool that would help these individuals with that. Yeah, I think in terms of barriers, I can only talk about my own barriers, and
Yeah.
like how I'm overcoming them at the moment is for sure, scheduling the time in. And now the kids are, for example, in kindergarten. So how can I make this work while being in the home office with my husband being at home? Like there is somehow that space, right? We just have to find it and acknowledge it and say, okay, this is the space. It's not like usual in the evenings. It's just in the morning. So let's, make the best out of that then. It's anyway much better, I think, because it's where you're starting the day, you have more energy. So it's actually anyways more ideal to have sex in that time of the day. Yeah. Well, what were your thoughts on that?
I find it really interesting how there's this idea that, okay, sex is better as you get older for some of the reasons that you named, which make a lot of sense to me. But then, why is it that then older people, there's this idea that, like, oh, they just don't want sex as much as, like, when you're 20 and supposedly it's, like, kind of shit, Like, why do then, like, 20-year-olds,
why is it shit in the most sexually active time, and then it gets better with less sex?
Yeah.
like it's just so unfair, the way that the cycle works, to be honest.
Yeah, and I mean that's definitely why sex education is such a powerful tool, starting with childhood, continuing in teenage years, and giving you then kind of the confidence in your 20s to make best use of that time, because it's really such a special time sexually in your 20s. You just more open, more curious. You have that freedom in a way, at least if you're living in a more free country. There's definitely a lot of like exploration possible, and then in the same time, I guess also challenges around what does deeper intimacy really mean, because you're just going from one to the next, and then like that diving deeper with someone is often quite rare. And even though we're all sort of yearning that in a way, I think if we were to do studies on older people who are still sexually active, like what I read about it is that sex is only like one part, like penetrative sex is only one part of their sex life. It's like these fine things in between the lines, when we're kissing each other during the day, when we wake up and hug each other, when we're saying a nice word to each other, like acknowledge each other, have that moment of like eye contact or like a little gesture. I think that's kind of that intimacy that they usually have even up to old age, and that I think can be such an amazing sort of foreplay warm up for the actual sex in the end. So sex is it's not so much then the end goal anymore. It's more that continuous thread of intimacy that's important, and that can lead to a very fulfilling sex life, even though you might have less sex, like the quantity is less, but it feels more special, even though it's less. Like that's how I picture it and what I've read about it. But of course, this is still rare, because with now the current older generation, most of them struggle a lot with having that special connection, having these intimate moments, because they are a generation where especially penis owners or men identifying as men that are very like emotionally closed, like because that's what they learned from young age, and probably boys still do also today, young boys. But yeah, so it requires someone unique in a way also to have that and to be able to express emotions and how we're feeling about each other. Yeah, it's quite deep work and requires like, to challenge yourself every day a little bit.
Do you think it's possible for people who are older now to reframe how they think about sex and pleasure? And how would you even suggest going about doing that, or like having their partner bring it up to them?
Yeah. No, I definitely I know from my heart that everyone at any age can pick up their sex life and yeah, have a breakthrough, have that empowering moment experience, like that aha moment, and it's never too late for sure. 100%. I think there's also a trend with older people dating, so that I believe helps a lot. Like simply having a different partner suddenly can like just open up a completely different scenario and space where you suddenly feel safer or more encouraged to open up. But also, starting with those little gestures, like learning little things, that you can implement, where it's not just about, okay, let's do that fancy Kama Sutra, take sex positions, because that's when you're older, I think, not really possible anymore unless you're very fit. But if we're really talking old age, like 70s and up, like I think people do struggle simply with the mere fact that sex is quite exhausting. So finding alternatives like giving each other a sensual massage or finding like relaxed oral sex positions where it's easy to pleasure each other but without having neck pain, and finding more comfort, getting maybe a sex chair that helps you just to have extra props and cushions that helps you feel really comfortable. But of course, this is already one step further. Like, first, you have to have that conversation with your partner. Sometimes it might help to introduce a platform like Beducated, but sometimes that might even scare off some people. So, like, I would recommend to probably start out on your own if you know that your partner is rather on the conservative side. So, start out on your own, explore yourself first, like, start cracking your own nut first and like open up that egg of yours, and then like that will naturally have an effect on your partner, and then yeah, you can sort of share with them their experiences, your experiences, and then taking it from there. And I think that's actually valid for any age, really. Like, start with your own journey first, and then you can see if your partner joins you along the way. Yeah.
So you shared earlier that you had a little bit of a struggle maybe with your partner when you had quite low libido. So maybe you have like some experience with having those kind of tough conversations when you have to bring something up and you obviously don't want to hurt the other person's feelings or make them
Yeah.
feel rejected or anything like that, but obviously you want to prioritize your pleasure. So do you have any advice for specifically, for instance, like long-term relationships, if something maybe you want to like bring something up but you don't maybe know how, or want to change something? Do you have any advice or tips, or maybe share your experience of something that worked for you? Or
Yeah. I think if you look at sex therapy, what they usually recommend is don't make penetrative sex the goal if you're in a relationship with mismatched libido, because the more you're trying to have penetrative sex, the more the person with low libido withdraws. And that's like a major issue, and like freezes the relationship immensely in terms of intimacy. So finding and navigating around that with other practices and seeing that as valuing that in the same way as penetrative sex, like, just puts off the pressure a lot. So for example, having like sensual massages where it's not about the penetration but just experiencing the senses in a different way, activating the senses in a different way, in a more gentle way. Yeah, and like I think for most people it's that like dead bedroom experience where you have less and less sex and eventually you don't have any sex, and then it's like it becomes weeks and months and then maybe even years, and you like it's so frozen that nobody's able to move anywhere, and it's just in that stuck place. And I guess that's especially for older couples the case, where it's like younger people, as they so sexually active, they would just switch partners just because it doesn't make sense. Like your desires are so strong that you wouldn't really make it work probably. But my own experience showed me that if I wouldn't have moved a centimeter, probably I wouldn't be together with my partner today. So I sort of, as a low libido person, challenged myself a little bit to look outside of my comfort zone, and in the same time without like pushing too much. Otherwise I would have withdrawn. So kind of like I experienced, like I got the recommendation to try out a vulva massage, and that sort of made me do it. And instead of like, if my partner would have maybe suggested it, maybe I would have said, oh no, that's, like, so it was like my own steps that I moved instead of making someone move. Like that never works, like trying them to like do it. And it has to come somehow from them. And I think if I know my partner is exploring themselves, and that makes me curious and want to know more. So that, I think that's the way of inspiring each other. Yeah, I think that's what comes to mind.
Thank you.
And then could we talk a little bit about, like, because you were saying part of the whole process of like opening up those conversations is knowing like where to go. So you had your recommendation for trying vulva massage, and obviously Beducated offers like courses for people. Could you give a little bit of kind of advice about how people can use Beducated to kind of improve their sex life, or like even if it's just by themselves, and then eventually open up that conversation with a partner?
Yeah, I'd love to. So it's basically an online platform where you can sign up for free, test it out for 1 day for free, and then you can choose between the different monthly or yearly pass. We even have a lifetime pass, which is new. You log in, and what you find on the platform are over 100 different courses, from learning something about oral sex, or learning something about communication in a relationship, or consent, or erectile dysfunctions, or sex after menopause, like just to name a few, or kinky BDSM courses where you can learn some shibari knots that you can try out. And the thing is, it's like you're scrolling down, and there's a lot of inspiration by just scrolling down. And I believe like sexuality is so diverse, like having this diversity in front of yourself, like, and then going through the process of, okay, what do I like? What's interesting for me? Like just that realization, get your creative juices, your fantasies going, and then you like clicking on something and, that sounds interesting. Let's try out, I don't know, the Shibari course. And then there's an expert guiding you through the process step by step in a video format that you can study from the comfort of your home. So you don't need to go to a Berlin BDSM seller and, expose yourself to others. You can just do that from home, streaming straight into your bedroom. So and I think that's sort of like that safe space that we're trying to create. I mean, there's a lot of amazing offline events and offline things that you can explore, but I'm always a little bit careful with this, because especially if someone is new to that, they might not know what consent means to them. They might not know what desires they like and don't like. So they very sort of, they can experience negative things in such an event if they're not able to address these things. So I'd say it's like Beducated is sort of the perfect starting out place for anyone, for any adult kickstarting sort of their journey, and then dipping their toes in and maybe trying out one technique that they learned in one course, and then seeing, okay, what does that do, and does it have any effect, and maybe set up like a little practice session with your partner. So like making it somehow a study field and becoming over that experimentation your own sexpert in that process. And that's really empowering thing for anyone, I believe. Not only having that empowerment in your sex life, but as I said before, for all parts in your life, because if you're able to say what you like in the bedroom, which is the most scary thing to do, you're also able to do that, in front of your boss negotiating about your salary. So because it's also a very scary thing to do, but it's sort of the same, can have the same shame sensation that you're feeling in your body, like it's getting hot in your body and you're like just, blushing up. But training that can just be an amazing tool for any situation, really.
Yeah, I love this idea of like creativity and like, I guess, like confidence that you're kind of bringing to the table. Like, I think that's the most important thing with sex, and just like sex education as well, is just like being a little bit curious and like asking those questions of yourself. And like that's definitely what we try to promote on the podcast as well, like just always revisiting, not getting stuck in the same kind of cycle, and like standing up for yourself, like you were saying, in the same as any kind of setting in life. It's important to be able to kind of state what you want and what your boundaries are and what you enjoy. And yeah, we love that. So
Yeah, and I think the difference to our platform from, let's say, porn, because you could get also a lot of inspiration from porn, especially if it's ethically produced. Like, there's amazing stuff out there for sure. But like what's usually missing there is the education part and the expert, that puts like the inspiration in context and gives you kind of a background information on what's happening, what you're seeing, which is just not the case in porn. I mean, I don't want to say like porn is bad, because I think it has a very important aspect and an important influence in people's sexuality, but we have to sort of get the sex education, how to put that into context and what that means for my own sex life and other people's sex life. And that, after all, is an actor usually, unless it's an amateur video, an actor giving a blowjob, which is like hours and hours of training on how to give how to deep throat, or it's a very challenging thing to do, and it's not for everyone for sure, but it's like the standard. And with our courses, there's a way to kind of look at step by step what's true for you, what's not true for you, what you want to learn, what you don't want to learn, and put that more into perspective. And in the same time, we also do have like some edu porn on the platform, where, like, for example, there's one that we just released on erectile dysfunction. Two men, actually one non-binary, one other performer identifying as men, are having a conversation about erectile dysfunction, and then they are sort of making out later on, helping each other, like how to pleasure each other in the context of erectile dysfunction, and what to do in a moment like that. And actually just seeing that process of pleasuring, it's just a very helpful way, like having that pleasure-based education instead of just like anatomical charts, right? But really seeing that in action and explicitly, like makes so much sense, because then we can understand it much better.
yeah.
That's such a great idea. Like in the sort of like a knowing what to do in that scenario and actually seeing it, because I feel like a lot of people in lots of sex scenarios kind of get there at any age really, and you're like, oh god, like I just really didn't know what to do, and like what to say, how to like not offend them, or like, you know what I mean. So I think being able to see it and play it out kind of thing is such a great idea. And I love that.
Yeah. So yeah, that we love Beducated. We love everything that you've kind of created, and thank you so much for taking the time to kind of talk to us about your own experience and your mindset behind why you created Beducated in the first place. Yeah, and thank you just for being so open and sharing with us. Is there anything else you want to share with our audience before we say goodbye, or like how people can find Beducated, where to look for you, anything like that?
Sure. So if you're curious about Beducated, you're welcome to join us at beducated.com. So it's like educated with a B at the beginning. And yeah, I'm happy to provide also a 40% discount for anyone who's interested in joining the yearly plan with us. I believe you just make a note in the show notes on that. So definitely check it out. I'd love to see you there. Yeah, and I think from like probably most of your listeners are in your 20s, maybe a little older, maybe a little younger. But I think what's always helpful was for me to kind of know that, like it's all right. That experience that you're right now in, like it is how it is. And like there's always a way to change it. Like you don't have to stay in that place. It's not like set in stone. Like whatever challenges you're going through, there is amazing education for you that helps you navigating through that. And yeah, allowing yourself and opening up your mind to input, I think is such an valuable aspect in life. And so I hope that inspired you all to see sex education not something that you put in your teenage years, but actually as a lifelong journey, and as something that is a great companion on your side throughout your life and throughout your different relationships and experiences that you have.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Definitely. Every day is a school day, so why doesn't it apply to sex?
Exactly.
Yeah. Amazing. Thank you so much. We've really enjoyed talking to you.
Thank
And
you.
everyone go check out Beducated and check out Mariah as well.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you.
Thank you so much to Mariah for joining us in this episode and talking to us a little bit about Beducated and just having a chat about different sex and different points in your life. We really enjoyed that. And thank you so much for Mariah and her team for offering us and you guys 40% off in Beducated if you use the code SEXTRAS.
Yeah, and we'll obviously put that all in the description. And as always, you know where to find us on Instagram, Facebook, TikTok, at Sextras Podcast, or our website, sextraspodcast.com. You can email us, sextraspodcast@gmail.com. And also, it is our 3rd birthday today as we're recording, so please go leave us a little rating or a review if you enjoy the podcast, because it would help us out so much.
Yeah, send us a cheeky happy birthday.
Yeah.
Or rip our Patreon also.
Yeah, sorry guys, we had to discontinue the Patreon because it was just really getting ridiculous. But find us elsewhere. We'll be around.
Yeah, and we'll see you soon.
Yeah, bye.
You've been listening to Sextras, presented by Honey Jane Wyatt and Maria Jose Hayodatiyi. Produced by Mabel Productions.